Caddis Maximus here, this time with a review of the Makita HR 2475 1-inch rated SDS plus rotary hammer. I'm not going to do a performance comparison against the Bosches. You have to be pretty controlled with more modern rotary hammers because they do perform pretty similarly, although there are differences. I will do a quick test of this Makita, even demonstrating drilling in wood, which actually works pretty well with. These are the other rotary hammers I can compare it with, which is the tried and true Bosch Bulldog, as well as the replacement, the Bulldog Extreme. They also have an Extreme Max. What I will say right off the bat, early in the review, is that this Makita is going to be great for installers. The ergonomics are really what show well. Although this trigger lock switch is in an unfortunate position where it is pretty easy, because if you're using it a lot, the ball right here at this joint of your thumb happens to land real close to it, and you'll be using it, and then you'll want to let off the trigger and it will have caught. Read a couple reports of that, and it's definitely true, just the way where your finger ends up lining up. So you want to be aware of that, but otherwise the weight and the ergonomics, and it runs quieter than the Bosch's. Not a bad unit, especially for 2 pounds of kinetic energy. This would be 1.6 pounds. This would be like 2.2 or 2.4 pounds. Takeaways, if you gave 100 of these or 1,000 of these to a giant contractor who builds skyscrapers and bridges and highways, I think after 3 years you'd find more Bosches still running than you would Makitas. Just the whole housing just is pretty robust, but just isn't quite as overbuilt as the way the Bosches are. Especially when you're just throwing them, like a commercial contractor would be just throwing these in the concrete, throwing these in the back of the tool truck. And this Makita and the Bosch Bulldog Extreme are almost the same price, and I'd certainly recommend the Bulldog Extreme because of just its power. But its ergonomics are not as good. It's not as lightweight. It's about 2 inches longer. The Bosch is also not quite as comfortable to hold, and the trigger right about halfway just jumps to full speed, so it's a little annoying because you don't have a whole lot of control. I do like the Makita's trigger. Anyway, let's give a quick sound, just a light running sound check so you can hear, because what's is interesting about all these different generations of tools and different manufacturers is they have their, just like car engines, they have their own sound. So this is a pretty well worn in Bosch Bulldog. We'll go to this Bosch and then we'll clear the table and do the Makita. Here we are with the Bulldog Extreme. When they first came out with the Bulldog Extremes, they were made in Germany, and they were really the ones you wanted to get. As far as I know, all the original Bulldogs are German made. Unfortunately, the Makita is Chinese. Now the Bulldog Extremes and the Extreme Maxes are, I believe, are made in Mexico or China. The Mexican tools are just fine. I think they do just a fine. I think they do a good job on tools. Certainly much better than China. This happens to be a German one, so. And I did re-grease this, and I haven't used it much. It really does need to be broken in. A big advantage of this Bosch, I will say, is that it has a rotating brush card in it. So electric AC motors, brush motors, actually have a timing just like a car engine does. And when you reverse them just through traditional switches like this, it reverses the wires in the motor, but the timing is still optimized for one particular direction of rotation, so you can end up losing up to 30% of the power on running a drill or a rotary hammer, anything with a brush type AC motor in reverse. Bosch has upgraded on the Bulldog Extreme, where this has a whole brush card in there, and you can see the yellow circle. So when you put it in reverse, it will have full power, meaning that if a bit gets jammed somewhere, that you can apply as much power to try to get it out as it had when you were trying to put it in. Anyway, this Bosch sounded a bit quieter than it normally would. And then here's the Makita, though. It's real obvious. One of the things I do, I think like their half-inch pistol grip drills, the DP4000, DP4002, are a miss. They have some real issues with the longevity of the gearboxes, but I think this tool is not too bad. And pretty quiet. Definitely a smooth runner. So the thing about the ergonomics, like the early Bulldogs are really reliable and they have plenty of power, but they're really square, and especially if you're holding them anywhere near the switch, the sharp edges of the switch really do kind of suck. The gearbox, it's pretty graspable, but still the hard edges are a little bit funky. It could be, you know, otherwise it's the standard in what you would consider rotary hammer ergonomics. I can't speak right now. The Bulldog Extreme did improve on that, although it is pretty heavy. It is very heavy duty. Some of the things that Bosch has really learned is on rotary hammers, the screws do end up getting a little bit loose, and you'll want to check on your rotary hammers after you get a few hours, and every few hours to check the screws. And also don't ever forget to lube the bits. You'll wear out the chucks if you don't lube the bits. But they still have the square switch, so it's a little bit funky to hold. They increased because of the bigger motor and the heavier hammer mechanism. It's just gotten a little bit wide, and the way these screw bores are, it's just not quite as easy to handle. So this would be more of a, you know, concrete contractor versus what I'd say like an installer, an electrician would really want something like the Makita. Its ergonomics are just so much better. Wow, this got long-winded, but I like to have a little bit more details. Let's run this Makita. Let me cut to that. Okay, we're going to go and knock a couple holes in this cinder block here just to see how this works out with its almost 2 foot-pounds of energy. That actually is pretty darn quick. We'll actually do that one more time here. Knock that apart. I'm going to go ahead and do just a little bit of a test. We'll do the chipping function. I found I have to turn the knob just a little bit past the white dot to be able to adjust this. But it should do pretty well. It is pretty easy to hit that automatic trigger lock. That's a little bit surprising there. Cinder blocks are pretty soft, so it's pretty easy to get through them. And somebody asked once if you can drill through wood. And yes, you can. If you're using like 2x4s at bottom place and walls going on right into concrete, you can drill into wood. You don't want to. These types of bits are just terrible for drilling through wood. But if you're just going through a 2x4, then yeah, you can go right through it, pull out. But I'll show you, you can indeed drill through wood with a rotary hammer and a traditional old school bit. You just want to make sure that you're pretty well secured. So yeah, you can drill through wood. Alright, so what we saw there is the Makita actually hits pretty hard. The Bosches, they both, and I think in an earlier video I misquoted, but the Bosches and these Makitas run 1100 RPM. The Makita's 4500 impacts per minute versus Bosch's, which are like 6000. So Bosch's try to beat just by having a decent hammer size and then running it really fast, where Makita's, you know, reducing a little bit of the vibration and the noise, and has put in just a heavier, pretty heavy hammer, and still maintain a decent weight just by having a pretty efficient housing. Some of the things also in the Bosch's is they have brass inserts in the housing for the screws that help hold it together, which is something the Makitas don't. I did one screw's a little bit loose, but it held together pretty well. So I've been talking a lot about the ergonomics. You can really see here, I can almost wrap my hand all the way around the gearbox there. I can get it almost all the way around the square of the motor. I like the way the edges are beveled. And actually the rubber overmolding, who knows how long it'll last, but at least for a while, this thing is pretty graspable. just pretty much any direction you want. So that's why I call it an electrician's or an installer's, is because having like this Sawzall like housing being all rounded, really just nice to grip. They have this little stub to try to protect the lever, and that stub's going to be like the first thing that gets ground off. I mean, it's pretty small. The lever is cantilevered out. It is pretty well rounded, so even if your hand's right against it, at least they beveled it. I don't know why Bosch never did that with their levers. And because it's cantilevered, it's pretty easy to actually activate this. And anybody wondering about the ratings on SDS hammers, it's like the Bulldogs is 7/8. This will be a 1 inch. The Bulldog Extreme's like a 1 1/8 inch. And it's like the maximum hole diameter that this small 10 millimeter SDS Plus chuck can accept. Or excuse me, not the chuck, but the whole mechanism can accept. I believe 1 1/8 is as large as they make for that 10 millimeter. And the reason is it's really due to impact energy. Once you start getting larger diameter bits, it's heavier pieces of steel, and it sucks away more of your hammering energy. It's the same thing as using standard framing hammer and trying to either pound a very small little nail or trying to pound a huge, spike nail. You're going to be a while if you're using too light of a tool for too big of a job. And I think Makita actually got this pretty nice. 2 pounds of energy is nice. This will make a difference for chipping and doing tile work, any of those kind of more general operations. It can be used by right or left-hand people pretty comfortably, although the fan is designed for right-handed people, so the vents are on the right-hand side and the bottom, but not on the left-hand side or the top. So you don't just get a face full of dust when you're operating this. But to tell you the truth, I kind of like this. It's about the same price as the Bulldog Extreme, and I'd still recommend the Bulldog Extreme, unless you really like the ergonomics and the lighter size. The ergonomics are primo on this. Really nice linear trigger. If you're thinking about getting a hammer drill, I'd say don't, because hammer drills end up being around $100 already. For corded ones, a lot of cordless drills have hammer drill modes, and hammer drills just absolutely suck for actually drilling in any type of masonry, whether it's bricks or granite or concrete. If you're going to do any of that, you're going to thank yourself for getting a rotary hammer, because these hammer only functions for chipping can just be a total lifesaver. And the Makita, although it hits slower, 2 pounds of energy is nice. I mean, it will get up tile easier than a standard Bulldog. But otherwise, go to Harbor Freight and get like one of their cheap rotary hammers for well under $100, or go to a pawn shop and get a real rotary hammer. And if you do come across one of these Makitas or looking for new, I think it's pretty worthy. I'll end up doing a teardown in the future of this just to see how it's built inside. But as far as how it ran, I think it's not too bad. And the fact that it's a couple inches shorter than the Bulldogs, and just is so easy to get a purchase on, just to wield this. This is going to be one that you would want in awkward situations. It just really, I think I'm going to end up disabling and removing this lock button so I don't have it get stuck on me in weird situations. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody watching and subscribing. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. Until next time, Catus Maximus out.